guys, welcome to another episode with me, Susanna Miles. I'm excited to have you, and I'm kind of excited about today's video and the next few videos that I'm going to be sharing, just because what was an idea for one video has turned into at least 3 and maybe 4 videos. So it's a really exciting topic, and the topic is continuing on with brand story, what we were talking about last week, and I'm really going so much deeper into, how we tell our brand stories, right? Because it's so hard to figure out what it is that we should be talking about, what it is that we should be sharing, and all that stuff. So this has been inspired by a audiobook that I was listening to, where the author said something about products versus brands, and the idea that businesses are the typical business that we think about is all about creating products, right? So, or at least products based on need specifically. So, people need something, they provide it, they do the best at selling it, and then we buy it, right? So that is, a business or a product based on need. And what a brand does is we build businesses that make people want to have whatever it is that we're selling. And it's not that you can, if you have a good brand, you can sell people things that they don't need or that are crap. But the idea of it is that you make people want it versus need it, because that is what creates that connection and, is going to make people want to buy our stuff and be involved with it and just, get it over and over and over again. Because, think of Starbucks. Do people really need, a $4 coffee when they could easily get one for, like $1 somewhere else? We want that Starbucks coffee, right? It's not that creating businesses based on need is bad. There are tons of companies that do this. There are tons of companies that do that and have, loads of success because of that, at least for a time. And when I was studying fashion marketing in university, I remember even being taught that, we were supposed to create businesses based on need, which is why I was so excited and intrigued when the author of this book shared this idea of branding being based on want. And the thing I like about it is that, with want, right? Want is a little bit more potent, I guess, or more powerful, just because it's rooted in desire or delight or even joy. And I find that these are the emotions that tend to, really hit us deeply, and, they stick with us for a much longer time just because they're so much more visceral. You know what I mean? And, as I'm listening to this book and thinking about it, I'm kind of like, okay, well, that's great. But how do you do that, right? I think that a lot of the times, a lot of us are doing things that are that work, and it is instinct or intuition, or it just kind of happens. And I'm in this space of wanting to understand how to make it happen, because I think that, if we go into this a little bit more intentionally, we can have so much more success, so much less stress in growing our business, and a lot more direction. So everyone is basically talking about storytelling and branding and blah, 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 but no one's ever like, this is how you do it. At least not for me. I never feel like there's any clarity on, which steps to take, how to make decisions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And I find that I come across a lot of people who are in the exact same situation where they're a little bit confused and they're just sort of like, making random decisions along the way, trying to make them all like fit together and all of that stuff. But, you know, going about it that way may work. A lot of the people I see who do that are still very successful, but there's always a little bit of, kind of stress and confusion in the background, which I don't know about you guys, but I find that like really, really affects my motivation. It like kind of like gets into my head, and I find it really hard to focus and, get stuff done when I'm in that space. And I used to think that I was just kind of dumb for not getting it. But what I've realized is that um, there just isn't a specific way of figuring out our story. There isn't a very clear, obvious path. I used to think that people were like keeping it a secret or something. Uh, but what I've realized is that so many people just get where they're going differently in different ways. And I think that, once we get there and once our story is pretty clear and solidified, I don't even think, people who reach that point, I don't think that we really even 100% know how we got there ourselves. Just kind of happens, right? But I do know, I do believe, I do think that this is, kind of a combination of experience and personality, mixed in with a little bit of intuition, a little bit of logic, and then, a little bit of adventurous spirit and just being willing to try different things, as we go along. So even though I'm not sure I can give you an exact step by step, I would like to share some of the little bumps that I've encountered along the way so that your journey can be a little bit easier. So if this is something that you're struggling with, if you're trying to figure out, what your story is, how to share it, et cetera, the series coming up is really, really, really going to help you a lot. So stick around and keep listening. And don't forget to like and follow this channel if you want to hear more about branding, storytelling, and, just creating a brand versus a product. The last few videos I've done have been inspired by the idea of gardening. And while I'm stepping away from that a little bit at this point, I do want to go back and remind you guys of one crucial thing, especially since I'm sure a lot of you haven't watched the last few videos. So an orchid is known for being a little bit tough to keep alive, but in the right environment, it will thrive, right? And then even though lavender is pretty hardy, if it doesn't have enough sun, if it doesn't get enough water, it too will die. And it's the same with you, right? Like if you're not in the right environment, you're not going to thrive either. So that's basically what step one is, figuring out what the right environment is. And yes, I know that, if you're struggling at this point, that's, easier said than done. And I also think that a lot of people get a little bit tripped up at this point just because they think that, they need a special environment and that makes them, kind of picky or finicky or, difficult or fussy or whatever, right? And, no, that's not the case. It just means that, like a plant, like an orchid, like a tulip, you just have, your own gifts and needs. And when you're able to thrive in the right environment, you are going to be able to do amazing things, not just, for yourself and all of that, but for the people that you're there to serve. And also, like if you're a basil plant, for example, you just need to be a basil, not a peppermint, not oregano, and not whatever. You just need to go wherever it is that basils tend to grow the best. And, you probably shouldn't hang out with people or try to get people to like you that don't like peppermint, or sorry, that don't like basil, or, maybe will actually, ruin how well you grow. Because there are some herbs that you can't grow with basil because it'll ruin them. Yeah, like don't hang out with those people. It's not going to be good for either of you. Oh look, Luna was meowing. She was feeling like, I don't know what she was feeling, maybe bored. Anyways, so that was actually a really huge realization for me. And, if there's anything that you take away from this, I really hope that that's what it is. There are a bunch of plants that you will thrive with and that will thrive, growing near you. Really just focus on that. And then, obviously, step two is, what plant are you? Right? Once I decided to accept who I am, and I went on that journey to figure out who that was, there's so much that ended up changing, right? So if you're still trying to figure out what plant you are, and where you should live, these are basically 5 things that I did to help me figure it out. So, grab a piece of paper if, it's something that you're trying to figure out as well. Are you ready to go, Luna? Are you ready to go, sweetie? Okay. Okay, so the first one is what drives you. Second, why it drives you. Third, why this is valuable and important to other people. Fourth, who needs what you have to offer and will connect with your story. And finally, what can you do to make it really, special for them once they decide to buy your product or work with you or whatever. So I'm just going to leave it at this week because it's already a really long video. And next week, the next video that I come out with, I'm going to be talking a little bit more about one of my clients. I'm going to talk about this in the context of an organizational coach that I work with. And during that process, you're going to see steps 1 to 5 in action. And I really think that will help you because it really illustrates the process so well. Working with that particular client illustrates this process so well. So yeah, make sure that you come back next week. Make sure you like this channel just so that you don't miss it. And yeah, I guess that's it for this week. So if you're kind of wondering, okay, well, yay, Susanna, thank you. What should I do now? So what now? Basically just take the first step, right? And what I found is that the secret was just accepting that it's going to be a bit of a journey, but at the same time still taking action in order as you move forward, because it's the taking of action and the result that is going to help you find your answers. And then also, if you do arrive at, the promised land and you're so clear on everything and it's amazing, there's a big chance that it will change as you move along, especially if you're, pretty new to business and you're, trying to figure things out, or you're doing like a really big pivot in terms of what you're doing. And the other thing is to take personality tests. So I've never personally found personality tests gave me the answers because, as I would go through them, I'd always be like a little bit confused about how to answer them because, well, in this situation, I would click A, or, in this situation, I would be C, and I could never decide. So, but they are really helpful because they are going to sort of point you in a direction. And as you start listening to the answers, you'll start getting a little bit more clarity on where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, and, maybe, a realization that, just a couple of gardens over is where you would be, so much more successful and happy. And if you're struggling, also reach out to me because I have a power persona builder with 17 questions that I take you through to sort of help you figure out how to apply who you are, what matters to you, all of that stuff to your personal brand. So reach out to me if that is something that you think would help you. In the meantime, have fun, do some journaling, and I will see you next week.